There is something of a vintage feel to today's video. That's because we are going to be looking at a quality of the human soul that is very old-fashioned, but it's essential to the art of writing a novel. If you don't have it, you will almost certainly abandon the attempt. To give you an idea of what we're talking about, take a look at this picture. This is Leeds Infirmary in 1956, and whenever I see it, it unleashes an avalanche of melancholy in my heart for a world that is no more. You can see straight away these nurses were all regular users of a product familiar to your grandmother, but not seen so much today: starch. Laundry starch, and by extension for the purposes of this lesson, moral starch. I'm going to introduce you to a simple but extremely powerful technique that all pro writers use to harness this quality to ensure they finish their novel. So welcome to another installment of my series on how to write your novel using that most unlikely of writing implements, a round Oxford bus ticket. We'll begin by considering some people who definitely had moral starch. It's easier to evoke than define, so we'll start our journey here. Christ Church College, Oxford, home to numerous famous alumni, including this one, Apsley Cherry Garrard. At 24, he was the youngest member of the British Antarctic expedition in 1910, with Captain Scott. But he didn't go to the South Pole with Scott. Instead, he set off with two companions on a 60-mile quest across the ice in search of the egg of an emperor penguin. The sun never rose, temperatures were 60 degrees below, and each morning before brushing their teeth, they had to hack their way into their frozen trousers with axes. Cherry Garrard's teeth all shattered because of the extreme chattering, and when they lost their only shelter, the tent, to a blizzard, and it looked like they were definitely going to die, they sang hymns. Now you might think an undertaking such as a journey in pursuit of an egg is a terrible idea, and you'd be right. But here's the point. Writing a novel is much worse. You spend months lost in the Arctic winter of the soul, buffeted by bitter winds and doubt and self-reproach, in a wilderness in which even singing hymns won't help. This is what George Orwell had to say on the matter. Writing a book is a horrible, exhausting struggle, like a long bout of some painful illness. Well, you'd be definitely better off not attempting it, but the thing is, you can't stop yourself, can you? The dream burns in your heart with a flame that won't be extinguished. You might as well tell a beaver not to build a dam. And the tragedy is, if you do quit, it will almost certainly be for the wrong reasons. Why do I say that? Well, why do new writers quit so often? It's because they start writing with little idea of what they are doing. Then they get stuck. And then Brother Doubt turns up and tells them something they had long suspected, namely that they weren't good enough to be a writer. And tragically they believe Brother Doubt. In truth, talent generally has nothing to do with it. The problem lies elsewhere, in the starch department. Guts, iron in the soul, vim, fortitude, mettle, true grit. In olden times they called it spunk. But you can't say that anymore. Essentially, it is the inner quality that makes you do something that you don't want to do. Well, here's the bad news. There's not much of it about these days. To see what I mean, take a look at a football crowd from the 1930s. Every man in the crowd is working class, and everyone is wearing a collar, a tie, and a hat. We don't see that these days, do you? And they also polish the heels as well as the toes of their shoes. By contrast, so I'm told, schoolmasters these days have to write to parents asking them when coming to school to collect their children not to turn up in their pyjamas. So why has this quality largely disappeared from our world? In a word, mollycoddling. This is University Parks in Oxford. Last spring I came across some school children here with measuring sticks on some sort of geography assignment. They wore high-vis jackets and hard hats. And I asked them why they were wearing the hard hats, and none of them seemed to know. And it filled my heart with despair to consider the effects of this pointless mollycoddling would have on these children. Because if they were brought up to think that going to the park was dangerous, How would they survive that far more dangerous thing awaiting them outside the school gates, the thing called life? 100 years ago, children read this, the boy's own paper. There are no hard hats or high-vis jackets. The editors would think nothing of instructing children to go to the chemist to buy gunpowder or arsenic. The gunpowder, for example, was for making exploding spiders, to play a trick on the maid. How we laughed. Especially interesting is the replies to the reader's letters section. We never get to see the original letter, just the replies. P.F. Perkins, Hartlepool. Thank you for your drawings. You have no artistic talent whatsoever. Find a manual trade. C.D. Dickens, Scunthorpe. Stay on land. Stammerers are quite unsuited for a seafaring life. K.L. Wilkes, Bombay. Stop rubbing it and see a doctor immediately. I know it seems harsh, but these children grew into the generation that fought the Second World War. And they didn't storm the beaches of Normandy in their pyjamas, did they? Now, on its own, moral starch is not enough. We need to express it through an actual doable act. And all pro-writers use the same technique to harness it. I'll explain what it is after this short commercial break.
Santa Claus conquers the Martian.
We need a Santa Claus on Mars.
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars. All right, Voldar. Now to find Santa Claus. Turn on your magnascope to third power.
We interrupt our program with a special bulletin. And Mrs. Santa Claus has positively identified the kidnappers as Martians.
Do you ever read a book or watch a movie and think, I could do better than that? Well, now's your chance. Get Gateway to Narnia, my free 10-part e-course on how to write your first novel. Click the link in the description below the video and get the first lesson in your inbox within the hour.
Thank you, Santa, for bringing happiness to the children of Mars.
The trick that all the pro-writers use is the power of habit. Habit is a miracle drug. You can steamroll a brother doubt out of the way using the power of habit. You could move an entire beach using only a spoon if you made a habit of moving 5 spoonfuls in a day. With writing, the 5 spoonfuls of sand are the word count. You inculcate a daily habit of writing at the same time every day with a target of a set amount of words, and you stick to it. The exact amount of words is not so important. Ernest Hemingway wrote 500. Mark Twain wrote 1,500. Stephen King claims that he writes 2,000 words a day. Graham Greene wrote 500 and would stop in mid-scene once he reached the 500th. That shows how hard he must have found it. But that's the whole point. If you stick to the goal each day, a miracle will slowly unfold unnoticed. You will acquire an entire first draft in 3 months. The magic works because of a paradoxical aspect of time. It can drag and flash by at the same time. The hours you spend at the keyboard will drag, but the months will flash by. Now, the first draft is massive. The task is so much easier once you have it. And you don't need to worry about whether it's any good or not. It's not supposed to be. It gives you something to improve. All writing is rewriting. Think of the first draft as the sand with which you will build your castle. Well, I hope you find this helpful and that you can find the necessary starch in the soul to like and subscribe to the channel. In the next video, I want to look at one of the most ancient and overlooked writing implements of all, the human heart. And I will leave you with a thought from a writer called Richard Bach. A professional writer is an amateur who didn't quit.